But how do you keep it in? How do you keep it fresh? I mean, obviously wine is something that oftentimes will get better as it gets older. But say it's just a little bit more simpler wine. It's starting to hit its maturity. It's starting to go over maturity. You know, so many wines. Are there techniques that you say?
Yeah.
Like, let's weed through this.
Yes,
let's
absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's a beauty. We, as a team, taste every bottle that we open.
Sure.
And if there's something of interest, I demand that the staff holds the glass. We put it in our station. We taste it together.
Okay.
If there's wines that we think are getting on in years and it's time to work their way, or if they're au point, as we say, then what we do is we fit them into tasting menus. We have so many guests that come here for 6, 8, 10 course tastings, and they ask for pairings. And so we can open a bottle, maybe use it on 3 or 4 tables, and really get people to have that good snapshot.
Well, I remember when I started here, just the immense level of trust that you would get
from the
not
guests,
just regulars, but from tourists.
Again,
tell me.
Again, that's the luck of the house. I mean, not to say that the house is lucky, but it's lucky for me that I have a reputation like Daniela's to stand in front of, and have that back me up, because it's true. There's a great deal of trust from the guests. They really come here, and very often they don't want to make any decisions. They're happy.
They want to be taken care of.
Exactly.
They don't want to do work. Right.
Yeah.
So what's next for this program? I mean, you've gotten a lot of accolades. You're well known as one of the great programs in the country, if not the world. What is the next step? What are you going to be doing over the next couple of years?
Well, I don't believe that a wine list needs to be bigger in order to be better.
Okay.
So I think it needs to be more focused, and at the same time have a nod for everything. So I want to expand the half bottle selection a great deal. I think that helps a lot for flexibility, and I think that people are actually drinking better and drinking less these days.
Sure.
Not everybody, certainly not me.
So when you say half bottles, you're not talking about a half bottle of Sauvignon Blanc from wherever. You're talking about, like, I want to find Corton Charlemagne from 92.
Exactly. Sure, exactly, which is difficult to do. But more importantly, I want to develop for the future relationships with growers who will bottle in smaller formats, especially for me. And a lot of people are willing to do that.
That's such a great answer.
Yeah, a lot of people are willing to do that. Having that relationship with the growers and the winemakers helps, and it's important to be able to keep that conversation. First of all, to learn about wine, because you can read whatever you want out of a book, but you have to ask the winemaker to get the real answer. And not always that they'll give it to you, but
not always will they give it to you.
But if you develop that relationship with the right people, and
you can at least tell when they're lying.
Those people I count amongst my friends who are winemakers to lie to me,
right?
But they may not answer me.
but that's something that at this
huge.
level of your career you must see much more, that ability to build those relationships.
It's again, I'm very lucky because I've been given this opportunity and the connection to the restaurant, and I guess I'm not as much of a jerk as I come off sometimes, because some of them actually like me.
Well, you must be showing them something different.
I bring lots of fun. I bring lots of fun sugar.
Well, you bring lots of great wine.
And then the other side of that is that I want to develop the large bottles. Michael across town, Michael Madrigal, who's the chef sommelier of Barbelote, is so much fun, and he's so excited about wine, and he's such a great passion, and he loves big bottles, and so do I. Yeah. It's such a festive and fun thing to be able to open a big bottle, walk around with it, share it with everybody.
In a way, I think this restaurant's very associated with that. John Luke used to do that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I especially for wines by the glass, and also special bottlings, people who don't necessarily make big bottles, I want to start having them make them for us.
You want your special requests?
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
It's expensive to make a bottle that's unusual size.
Yeah,
it's
easier bottling line and stuff.
It's a different bottling line.
It's not even just different shape. I mean, you have to get a whole different.
You have to do it by hand, basically, and it's easier to do half bottles.
Okay.
Where a lot of people are willing to do that, but much more difficult to do bigger bottles. So that takes some time, and also I don't want to be in a situation where the same wine in the 750 is so much cheaper by scale than a large bottle.
Because that really can zap you.
Yeah, well, it kind of defeats the purpose, because then less people are going to try it or have the fun. But if the price is right, I'll pour it by the glass and do some fun. I just want to do some fun stuff and get some interesting formats in here. And then I also want to expand certain selections in terms of depth and focus, and really, really bring forth some of those appellations that I like to drink and that people like to drink that make sense with this wine list.
Food that you think like, boy,
so I'm on the hunt for Old Chinon, and I'm basically like
that's a great hunt to be on.
I know. Well, I'm hounding brokers all over Europe and say, who's got them? Who's sitting on the cash?
Right. Let me know where the goods are.
I'm looking for Old Bandol. I'm looking to buy some next month. That looks like a pretty promising seller. And so then you can really make a statement about an appellation, and I'd like to put little a few words about the area, why it's interesting, why I have the selection that I have, why it costs what it does.
On the list.
On the list, in the list, yeah.
little bit of
I do have,
extra
I basically, right now, the only way I do that is with producer pages to focus on producers.
Okay. Is that a tool that you use a lot?
I do.
Producer page?
There's not that many on the list, but there are more. Obviously, if I'm going to devote a page, I have to have a fair bit of a fair offering of selection.
Right.
So, although not Dovisat at the moment, but Ravenel in Chablis has his own page. Domaine della Romani Conti has 2 pages.
Some producers that are pretty good.
Yeah, it's mostly
you
fancy.
You have 2 pages of DRC. Wow, that's pretty
well,
impressive.
just because it wouldn't all fit on one, and I had a lot to say about it.
But that means you have quite a bit. Yeah. Oh, okay. The verbiages.
Indeed.
Okay.
Well, we have a fair bit.
There used to be a lot of Latour here, like a lot.
We have a whole page for Latour, and we get almost everything directly from the chateau.
From the chateau.
It's really
that's always been a
really special offering,
relationship.
and some real great values in off vintages that are drinking great.
Man, Latour and off vintages, it's like
73.
miss, you know? Yeah, exactly.
So good.
Exactly.
Where'd that come from?
Right, where'd that come from?
I don't understand.
67, 66.
Yeah, exactly. Chef Jean-François was the executive chef. Jean-François Brual. Born in '73. I brought him a taste of that. He was like, "This is unbelievable." I was like, "You'll never guess what it is." He was like, "I thought they didn't make any good wine in my vintage." I was like, "They didn't. I don't know what's actually in there. They must have put a fake label on it because there's no way this is '73." But it was. It was great.
You're like, this is the second best thing from this vintage.
I have a page for Guigal's single vineyard Côte Rôties.
Yeah, always a long history.
But I want to start doing things like vintage oriented or appellation oriented, not specific to producer.
Page.
So
93 in focus.
I'm focusing right now in Bordeaux on the 82 vintage, and I'm going to do a page of just singling out all of the 82s because it's a brilliant vintage. It's historic for many reasons.
For many reasons,
because in terms of the current trade structure, the pricing, and the authorities. I mean, Robert Parker built his reputation on the 82 vintage.
Who's someone certainly associated with this restaurant.
Oh,
many
Bob Parker's a great guy. He's been a great supporter.
Great supporter over the years. Dedications in the book. And
for sure. He's a great guy. He's hilarious too, and so important historically.
Genuinely a nice guy.
Oh,
it seems to get overlooked in a lot of people's retelling about how nice he is.
We did a lunch here not very long ago that was actually an auctioned off charity event where Bob came and donated some wine
from his cellar.
From his cellar, exactly. And the person who won the auction also brought wine from his cellar. So there was quite a bit of wine, and it was a lot of fun. Really, some great bottles. And to listen to him start to talk about Côte Rôtie.
Yeah.
And
he knows a little bit about it.
He knows everything about it. And it's awesome to hear an expert speak about something that they know like the back of the hand and that they love immensely. It's great. I love that passion. You know?
In our side of the world, it's almost like sitting down with
what's that, the Upper West Side?
Yeah. It's almost like sitting down with like an ex-president and hearing him talk about statesmanship.
Totally.
You know, what's it like to be a diplomat?
Right.
The guy who really knows, was there, saw it all happen, slaying it out.
And I have such immense respect for those guys in our industry who really have that. You know.
Sure.
There's
people on your staff. I mean, Bernard's been here forever.
Bernard Vrode is my hero, and I'm actually going to jump out of a plane with him in 3 weeks.
Really? Is that true?
This is his 3rd time. He's almost ready to jump out. He's a skydiver.
You're going to give him a shoot this time?
He can fly. He's this amazing maitre d' who's been with Danielle forever. He used to work with him at Le Cirque, and has worked at some of the most storied restaurants in New York. And it's funny, I'm reading a book right now by Vexberg called Dining at the Pavillon, a reference to Henri Soulet's Le Pavillon, historic restaurant in New York, for the first real grand French restaurant. And Bernard is like, "Oh yeah, Soulet used to come." And talking about these amazing people in the history of food in New York.
used to work there.
Syria used to work there, exactly, as a waiter.
Delmonico.
Telling me stories about famous chefs who I think of as the old guard in New York. Me being a relative young kid in this business, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that guy, unmentioned chef. Yeah, I remember. I worked with him at Le Cirque. One time, they used to make this sauce they call it La Diable. It was like it almost came out of a can. You had to add some spices to it, Espelette and stuff. I wanted some for my bread. I asked him for it. He wouldn't give it to me. I didn't talk to him for 30 years.
You gotta ask him. I remember we did a history of Bernard. Someone did a history of Bernard.
I would love to see that.
Because
I've seen pictures of him with hair. That's pretty good.
Well, absolutely. Laurent too. But we had to study a subject and present it to the staff. So people did cheeses and different wines, and the history of French snails. somebody did History of Bernard, and it was a good friend of his. And Bernard sat down in an interview and talked about when he used to work at a Belgian restaurant and wore a monk's garb. He dressed as a monk.
It never gets old. The guy's
like a Franciscan friar.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was his job, was to take orders, and that his nickname was Rose. They used to call him the staff used to call him Rose.
He's got red cheeks.
It's amazing. Some of the stories. But moving on from that, so you're here with the staff, and you have some things planned out for the coming years. But what are some, one of the things I realize about 4-star restaurants or 3-star Michelin restaurants is they are often very much what they are. This is what we do. We have a clear sense of who we are. But they're often also out there. They're looking at what new chefs, young chefs are doing around the world. They're like, that's cool, let's implement that. There's a sense that like we want to be at the form, we want cool things to be here. And they're out there looking. Are there restaurants out in the world that you've said, now that person or that program or that chef is doing something really spectacular?
Yeah, absolutely.
I admire that. I wish I could bring back a piece of that to what I'm doing.
Well, in terms of food, I have great respect for this movement of really implementing new ideas. Which there's really no new ideas in food unless you're like totally doing something that doesn't seem like food. So those sort of science chefs,
right,
I think are really cool. I really don't think that they would make sense in a restaurant like this. So I wouldn't say I would bring them into this effect, but I have a great deal of respect and I enjoy it. I really think it's very cool. In terms of wine, there's so many young people who get excited about what end up being wine trends, things that kind of come and they go.
Sure.
And I like to taste wine, but I'm also very critical, and I have particular things I like and I don't like. So I don't tend to focus very much on what other people are doing in that sense. But there's a couple things that I've seen that I think are very, very cool.
You want to tell us?
Yeah, one of which would be focusing on regions in the way that I just described.
A little bit more regionality.
And I've seen that around the country in some small restaurants. It's not so much more of a trend, I guess, than anything one specific place has done.
So getting away from grape variety as a defining way of slicing
exactly.
up the globe.
Well, I would keep the list the same way, but then to do a specific page that focuses on a region or
Sure.
a
And why is that important to you?
Because regionality is one aspect of wine, and in the sense that you can think about the history of it, you can think about the geology of it, the farming practices, the what means they have in terms of water and sunlight and these things. They're all aspects of wine. The same way that it's the country's economic history plays an important role, and so I think by drawing into focus different aspects of what makes wine interesting, because really, I mean, it could be a question of horticulture, it could be a question of a family and their history, or a culture.
It could be soil. It could be Marcel Lapierre's family. I mean, what does define things here?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And or what could define things
What
here?
could
Even
define
if they
things.
may,
Even better
it could be Morgon, but it could also be Lapierre.
Mhm.
And so different ways of thinking about it. My friend John Slover has done a
We did
really
an
cool
interview
thing.
with John.
Cool. He's done
Really
some
great.
really cool stuff throughout his career. But I really like this idea. He opened a wine bar a year and a half, 2 years ago. And his idea was that about 3/4 of the list was available for purchase by half bottle.
Absolutely.
And they weren't in half bottles.
Right.
He would just open them, sell you half the bottle, and then make use of the rest went on sale. And that's such a cool idea because people get to try some really interesting
People are
stuff.
psyched.
Yeah.
When
I mean, I
psyched.
essentially do that in terms of wine pairings here, but I
Sure.
don't really do it in terms of bottles. Again, I think it would make sense more in a smaller program, but it's a really, really cool idea.
It was kind of like he
was
came up with a
genius.
different mathematical model.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
the
For the
everyday.
program, yeah,
It was
yeah,
incredible. It's like he really looked at it through a different
It was
prism.
very, very cool. Very cool.
Well, those are two good ideas. Well, Raj, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us.
Delighted.
Learned a
This has
lot
been
from
fun.
sitting down with you.
It's always a pleasure to sit and talk with you, Levy.
And
I
it's,
swear.
and as I've said, many times, you exemplify a lot of what's really great about the wine program, not just in New York, but anywhere. Excited about wine, willing to share that with people and to go to great lengths to do it. I'm excited for you. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, man.